socialism. Because standing in lines for flour and toilet paper will bring our nation closer together and tug at the heartstrings of equality. The Kate Dalley Show starts now.
Eminentissimo, eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum. Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost. Qui sibi nomen imposuit, Leonem decimum quartum.
So the Pope is Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who's taken the name of Leo XIV, Pope Leo XIV.
All right. How are you today? Oh, it's going to be a good one. I hope you're doing good out there. And welcome to the Kate Dalley Show. And of course, phone lines are open. So can't wait to hear from you. And hopefully we'll have Suzanne Sherman join us. Also, new Pope. Oh, interesting stuff, too. I've got some interesting stuff on that I want to share with you as well. I also have a former UFC champion coming on today, too. So this is going to be a fun day. UFC champion for 4 years, UFC Hall of Fame, who actually is going to talk about soil. And it is fascinating. So I can't wait to have him as well. Like I said, phone lines are open, 888-673-1450, 888-673-1450. I'd love to get your thoughts on the new Pope, especially if you're Catholic. What are you thinking? And, he has named himself on the name of Leo XIV. And there's some interesting history there. So I can't wait to share that with you. Gosh, there's so much stuff going on. There always is. I know. But it just gets interesting, doesn't it? So the former, you probably are wondering why Leo. And actually, Leo is the fifth most popular name of the 267 popes. Leo is like the fifth most popular. Okay. John, of course, I think that's the most. But of course, Leo. And so this is going to get interesting because the line in mainstream media, okay, the line in mainstream media is over and over and over again. You're going to see this phrase used. And I'm wondering why they're using this phrase, because the news goes to the AP from the Pentagon. And so we've proven that on the show. Okay, so soft modernization views. You're going to see this over and over and over again. Softened Catholicism's confrontational stance toward modernity, okay? And especially science, okay? Toward modern views, especially science. He taught that human science was not to be rejected, but neither was it to be deified. It was to be considered a tool by which men, guided by faith, could reach truth. And the former Leo XIV, the one that he's named after, there's some interesting things about this. There was a book written by Michael L. Brock, and it was talking about the former pope. So we can get some insight as to why this was chosen for this time. And I thought this was really fascinating. It said, while many recognizing the evils of unrestrained capitalism, found salvation in socialism. He fought both as evils which affirm only the material dimension of man. Some saw him as a man sent by God, moved by the Holy Spirit. Others rejected him. This is the former one, as a relic of the Dark Ages, and saw in his reign the end of 19 centuries of religious tyranny. Most simply ignored him. Kind of odd, right? And then it went on to say that Leo saw the governing office as a trust from God, which should be respected as such. So complete and total respect for the governing offices and government. And I quote, to despise legitimate authority in whomsoever vested is unlawful as a rebellion against the divine will, and whomsoever resist that rushes willfully to destruction. But the ruling authority must always act for the well-being of the citizens and not give occasion to rightful discontent. That's interesting, don't you think? Okay, so we're seeing over and over and over again today, every article, and I'm talking down to every local news, is that saying softened Catholicism confrontational stance toward the modern world, especially science. And he taught that human science was not to be rejected, but neither was it to be deified. But at the same time, trying to open up the science is extremely important. Okay. So there's some interesting things here. I was just, I don't know. I was a little surprised to see the Pope, Robert F. Prevost, 69 years old. He is Republican Party. That's interesting. And that he also, is a social justice warrior. Okay. So there's a real dichotomy going on. It's very interesting as you're sort of absorbing information from this new Pope. Now, they say that the new Pope, so this is a first, he's actually Peruvian, but he's from America. So this is a first, okay, is that he was overseeing the Pope Francis bringing on of the women, okay? The women, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Part of this is that that he basically was the guy who was overseeing Pope Francis adding 3 women to the voting block that decides which bishop nominations to forward to the Pope. That was kind of interesting. So they were talking over and over again about how he was going to continue on with Pope Francis views, and left some of his left-leaning views towards socialism, towards, again, always kind of dictating that the poor are marginalized. I'd like somebody to explain that to me, though. How to marginalize the poor. I don't always understand that statement. We throw it around a lot as if it's a given, but are the poor always marginalized? I don't know. It's kind of a strange. It's just a strange thing, I think. Anyway, so basically, that he is going to sort of carry on with that. He's expected to continue Pope Francis's more progressive policies, particularly regarding LGBTQ and rights, which we've talked about this. Rights for LGBTQ. No, we all have rights, and the particular right spelled out in the Constitution is for what? It is for the equality in the courtroom, and that's about it. Okay, there doesn't need to be another set of rights on top of that. Okay, because that would mean that everyone else gets lesser rights, while as LGBTQ gets a different set of rights. That's not okay either. Okay, your sexuality should not preside over what rights, okay? And the inclusion of women. So he's also expected to address concerns about the church's finances and internal governance. So this ought to be super, super, super interesting, because I'm just surprised, I guess. I don't know. It's just very, very, very weird because there's 2 different dialogues going on. One is saying he's very conservative, and the other one is saying, no, he's carrying on. He's carrying on everything that Pope Francis is going to do and more. So I don't know where you stand. If you're Catholic, I would sure love to hear from you, of course. Call in 888-673-1450. I'd love to get you to weigh in on this and how you're feeling about this. A lot of people very excited that this is coming from the United States. And then what message is that sending as well? Because that's kind of an interesting part of this too, is, okay, what message does that, what does that mean? What does that really mean? I know you've got to be asking that. Hi, caller, go right ahead.
The previous 2 popes that were elected by these same cardinals, well, not the same ones, but, the general same group, were communists. They outright said we need the New World Order, one world government. And these are outright communist Marxist statements. They're collectivist statements, putting special privileges for women, What is this justice? Social justice is nothing but racism, special privileges at the cost of individual rights of others.
Right.
This it's real clear that they elected the same kind of pope they've been having there, working for the New World Order.
Right.
And this ideal that there's something evil about or wrong about unfettered capitalism. I've asked hundreds, maybe 1,000 people to explain to me what is evil about freedom, a free economic system of freedom, capitalism, and nobody has come up with an answer. I've heard some of the most lame answers. Most of the time, they just avoid answering the question. So, that's a question for your callers, for yourself. I think you realize there is nothing wrong with the freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. Thank you. I really appreciate it. There's just so much to say on this. And so I 100% want you to weigh in. I'm not Catholic, so I know that this is important to Catholics. But there's always big meanings going on. There's always a bigger, the Catholic Church has a pretty big, how do I say it? My brain is just dead. I'm running on zero sleep right now. But I think it's basically they have a big seat at the table. I'll say that. Okay. That's a really, really interesting thing to think about. And so that's why I always want to put out there, what else is going on? That's why I was really looking at the former Leo. Why was this name chosen? There's so much symbolism. There's so much there that the deep state does. And do they have a seat at that table would be the question, right? And the caller just brought that up. Do they have a seat at that table? And it seemed as though Pope Francis did have a seat at that table. So interesting. That's what a lot of Catholics even think. So I'm not putting something out there to offend Catholics in any way. I'm just saying that a lot of Catholics were really discouraged with sort of the way things went down with that and with Pope Francis. And so I thought, it's interesting. Everyone I know that's Catholic did not like Francis at all, thought he was very corrupt, actually. Be right back. Kate Dalley Show.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
All right, welcome back. Shake it up. They're definitely shaking it up. Welcome back. I've got Suzanne C. Sherman on with me, and so grateful to have her aboard. And let me just tell you, get over to allfamilypharmacy.com and order ivermectin and fembenzenol. Always do it while the supplies are there. Always do it while you can get it on the cheap. And allfamilypharmacy.com will send you a doctor script, and you don't have to find a doctor to get this from. So make sure and put in the code KATE10. You'll get 10% off. But also go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Kate. And you can order anything that you need, actually, and get refills of it so that you have it in quantity at your home, like the physical, tangible things that you need. These are great for prepping, have antibiotics on hand. So they're great for bartering, even if you don't use them. And I'm just telling you, it's a great way to go just to kind of prep and be ready for whatever comes. allfamilypharmacy.com/Kate. The code is Kate10. Suzanne C. Sherman, how are you?
Better late than never, Kate. It's great to be
Oh my
here.
gosh, my fault. Anyway, it was my fault. 100%. Anyway, I'm so glad that you're here. I was just talking about the Pope. It's kind of interesting. There's two different conversations going on. One that he's a Republican conservative, and of course he's from the United States. He's Peruvian. But the other is that he's progressive and that he's going to carry on Pope Francis's ideology. So very interesting today. There's lots of conversation, roaming around, but just interesting. So I covered a little bit of that. And you're our legalese expert. So I want you to kind of bring us back, if you want to, and kind of talk about Trump versus Pritzker, sanctuary cities, the Stephen Miller, the White House advisor on supremacy clause. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I know you also sent me an article about the resettlement. Let me just back up a little bit, because this article that you sent me about the federal judge ordering the resettlement of 12,000 refugees into the United States under an order issued under President Biden's watch, this goes back to the ink wasn't even dry on the Constitution, Kate, where we started seeing federal judiciary run amok. And this past weekend, I taught a couple of classes in North Carolina, and one of which was on federalism, because justifiably, when you're having to deal with a disaster, we're seeing, these people are seeing the unmitigated disaster, trying to deal with FEMA. In fact, one lady I was speaking to has still been displaced for over 7 years, trying to deal with them. So what we're seeing right now, again, the federal judiciary is trying to tell the general government how to do their jobs. And Roberts was just questioned on this. We're seeing these Ninth Circuit, the lower district circuit judges issuing injunctions that affect national policy, going way beyond their area of territorial jurisdiction. And this is really a question of where he said, well, we need independence. These federal judges need independence. But Kate, I would ask you, do we have independence, or do we have judicial supremacy, where again, the people that are screaming about protecting our precious democracy, or we have the will of the people being thwarted absolutely by these rogue judges who have been appointed. They're not accountable. This is exactly the most unrepublican, undemocratic process we're experiencing, but this is the one they seem to want because they lost the election.
Jeez. Yeah, you're right. There was a Babylon Bee about this, and it was Trump. Trump now comes back as a judge so that he can do what he wants. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, keep going. Yeah,
Yeah. So there was a case, because one of the things we had been talking about was lawfare, and again, this was going back. James Iredell, who had gone after for a letter that he had written to his constituents, and Thomas Jefferson, although he was the president, he had written a letter to his constituents, and Thomas Jefferson said, citing the Virginia Constitution, that the federal judge wanting to have, he was criticizing John Adams' foreign policy. So even though he was part of the administration, Jefferson sided with his state of Virginia and said, absolutely, the First Amendment protects a representative and having communications with his speech. This was an example of lawfare. And this was back in the early days, the beginning of this experiment. Right. And this was, like I said, this was in 1797. And this is what Iredell urged the grand jury.
Okay, hold on that. Hold on that. We're going to come right back right after the break. I want to hear that. Be right back with Suzanne C. Sherman, legal expert on Constitution. Be right back. Kate Dalley Show. Don't go anywhere.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. sure for this. I hope I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Smiling from my head to her feet. I said, hey.
All right, welcome back. Kate Dalley Show. I've got Suzanne C. Sherman. You can actually go to her website through that as well, SuzanneCSherman.com, and get more. Host of the Red Hot Chili Preppers. Love that. And boy, she knows her stuff. I gotta have you back just for a show on that. I really do. I keep saying that, but I need to do that because you're so good at it. And you're phenomenal at that. And also, I just wanted to mention this show airs every night on X for free. You can actually go watch it at 8:30 Eastern on xamericanews.com and X America News on X. Sorry, it's a mouthful. And also coming at you from Canyon Media Studios in St. George, Utah. And so that's where this show originates from, Canyon Media Studios. All right. So welcome to the program. You were just about to do an awesome quote. So go right back to that if you
thought
would.
I could squeeze it in before the break.
I know, right?
But it's worth coming back to, because think about what we have heard going back with the lawfare against Trump. And Iredell, the federal judge, had urged the grand jury to, quote, root out differences of opinion which could evolve into enmity. And again, going back, what was the difference of opinion here? Mm-hmm. We had a Virginia congressman criticizing in a letter to his constituents the foreign policy of John Adams. This is terrifying, to think that the government's going to use its might against a state representative in criticizing the foreign policy. And we're still seeing this today. I tell people when we have a current event that's an issue, I can give you an example of where this started before the ink was dry.
Whoa. Love that. All right. So, there's been a lot of talk in the last week about the first 100 days. I would love to hear from you. What is your take on the last 100 days from the legal standpoint of being a kind of a constitutional attorney? What are you witnessing? Because we have the press saying what the press is saying, and a lot of people think they know what's happening. What do the last 100 days look like to you?
I'm underwhelmed on some aspects, and I'm okay with the others. Coming from a position of somebody who is a Jeffersonian federalist, I don't like seeing Washington, D.C. have this much power, but I'm also put into the position that I'm breathing a huge sigh of relief that Harris wasn't elected. So it pleases me, ignoring the Constitution right now, to see a president whom I feel places the interests of the American people and their well-being at the forefront. And that's really what we're looking at in this case, with the federal judge ordering Trump to resettle into America 12,000 refugees. I mean, after what we've been seeing the past 4 years, these communities they're being resettled to aren't doing well. The people that are being resettled aren't doing well, and they're being resettled for political power and gain. In my book, Federalism, How Decentralization Can Save America, I have an article, a chapter that explains how marginalized people are being used as puppets and pawns for political gain. We know this is for power in the House of Congress. There's no denying this, and this is certainly not a humanitarian mission when people are taken from their homes and now turned loose in New York with no housing. They can't work until they go through all these other processes, and the people aren't happy about it either. However, the ones that support this don't live in the communities that are paying the price for their decisions. So on that realm, I don't think it's easy to say I'm glad that's being put to a stop. I'm glad deportations of criminals are halting. And it's interesting that those that are crying about due process sure didn't care about them when churches were being shut down in 2020, sure never complained about red flag laws, sure never opened their yaps over civil asset forfeiture. Now all of a sudden they care about law and order and due process.
What was your take on the Supreme Court allows Trump ban on transgender members of the military? For me, sitting here, I found it interesting that this is okay, obviously transgender members in the military, I don't even know how to wrap my brain around that being a thing ever. But looking at it, it's almost as if this is the focus, like total focus. And I want the focus to be on, hey, we're not going to war, right? So where do you fall on that?
I think they have no say in it whatsoever. The president is the commander in chief when we're at war, and when have we not been at war. So I would say they have absolutely no jurisdiction whatsoever on the matter. And it's kind of interesting to me that people that are confused about their gender and are going through this process with all the medication, they're on all the hormones. We've seen all the shootings from the transgenders and the violence that they're capable of here in Salt Lake City, numerous examples. Yet they also support firearms being taken away for people for mental health issues called red flag laws. So show me how that's supposed to work out. I just think, again, the Supreme Court, this is judicial supremacy, not checks and balances. If an act, for instance, is constitutional and that is the law, it is up to the executive branch to enforce and execute that law. It is not up to the Supreme Court to tell them how to do it.
Okay. Sometimes I wonder if we ratchet up the level of crazy to bring the level of crazy down, but really and truly, we should be tackling other issues. I mean, this is a no-brainer to me, okay? Transgender members and us paying for their transformation in the military, it's bizarre, okay? And I don't agree with it at all. And most military would tell you this is just asinine that this was ever a thing. But I feel like all the focus is on that, and we should be focusing on so many other things with the military and addressing so many other concerns, but this seems to be the only thing cropping up. So
because it's a distraction. It has no real impact or opportunity to improve anything. Certainly not the well-being of the veterans who can't get care under the VA. Certainly isn't resolving the wastefulness at the VA. You know, that was uncovered by DOJ. What happened with that? Well, that could have been addressed if Congress wanted to vote, but they decided to take 4 days off and quietly put the vote off. So they're hiding that. You know, I think my disappointment, I would have to say, really is more with Congress than with Trump. I mean, that's an easy one. But, you know, and I will say this also from a federalism perspective. On at the end of April, I think on the 28th, he issued an executive order about keeping America's cities safe. And the law and order, Republicans, conservatives are going to love this stuff. And ending this crime rate, Chicago, Illinois, New York, you know, justifiably so. However, turn this around and you get a Harris administration or somebody like this who declares there's an epidemic of gun violence, and we're going to send these same law and order resources, including federal, does that mean military, to gather up these firearms. You know, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you acquiesce to, right?
Right, because it was noted, I know Todd Starnes brought it up, but he noted that President Trump was asking about military taking over for police in basically any situation. So, yeah, I mean, I can see where it could be headed for sure. Yeah, we all should be.
Where does the general government have the authority to intervene in state law enforcement matters? You know, again, if you want to go back and quote James Madison in Federalist 45, that the powers to the general government are few and defined. Those remaining with the state are numerous and indefinite, concerning the lives, liberties, and property of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. The federal government doesn't fit in there at all. They don't belong policing local communities. Don't agree to this. Don't think this is a good idea because your side is in charge.
Oh, I agree. And we're asking the American people to put all their eyeballs, all of their attention, everything on what Trump does on a daily basis and not Congress. And so that was your point, the disappointment in Congress. Where is what are they doing? I mean, they're just like little cockroaches. I mean, what are they hiding in the corner, I feel like. Anyway,
I'm disappointed in the budget. We're not technically at war right now, even though we have troops all over the world. But $1 trillion military budget, we could have that and still be just fine.
Yep, we'll be right back. More with Suzanne C. Sherman. Isn't she fantastic? We'll be right back. Kate Dalley Show. Be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
So, let's move before they raise the fucking rate. All right now, baby, it's all.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Kate Dalley Show. Go to mypillow.com. They do have those Giza sheets, by the way. They were pretty phenomenal. And also, they have just so many gifts for Father's Day coming up. I know it's going to come faster than you think. Of course, Mother's Day, and of course, for your home. And they have so many things. The Rev 7 drink for brain cognition, you name it. Just put in the code Kate. Their pillows, I think, are down to like $17. They're like 80% off. Take advantage of it. And go to mypillow.com. And of course, the code is Kate. Suzanne C. Sherman is with me, and I couldn't be happier. She's amazing. She's just great. She's great to listen to, is she not? All right. So one of the latest headlines, and this was like an hour ago, sent to us from Government News, the AP News. Trump asks Supreme Court to allow him to end humanitarian parole for 500,000 people from 4 countries. Do you want to address that?
Certainly.
Okay.
I'm wondering why he needs to ask them permission at all. I'm kind of confused as to that. And this is what's funny. So this was, again, an order from a district court. And I love the word that they use, nullified one of the administration's most consequential immigration policy decisions. Nullification, and we'll wrap up the conversation with this, as we know, when it pertains to federal law, really should be a power that the states have, not a district court. Once again, if this is a policy decision and we have the United States immigration laws, which are in effect, the Supreme Court has no authority. We do not have judicial supremacy. This was really, I think, the biggest problem with Marbury versus Madison, where what all that's really taught is, well, it's judicial review, which has been interpreted again to what the Supreme Court says goes. I think this is highly problematic, and I think there's a reason why Trump keeps appealing to the United States Supreme Court, because I think if he feels, I think he feels that if he just ignores them and does what he should be able to do anyway, I think even the Republicans are feckless enough to enough of them to impeach him. So that's my thing. I think the Republican Party is just feckless. They're weak. They're not going to stand up for this. And interestingly, this really validates my position, which is constitutionally accurate, although nobody really understands this, that immigration is not a delegated authority. When people have these conversations, I just say, hey, can you tell me where in the Constitution the states delegated immigration to the general government? Because when they ratified the Constitution, they were sovereign and independent states on the par as England, France, Portugal, Spain, and so on. They had different requirements, different cultures, different needs for who was going to be coming in the states. The reason this got nationalized was, again, federal programs, Supreme Court decisions interfering in how the states were going to allocate funds, assets, and resources when it came to people that were here, that were not U.S. citizens and that thwarted immigration policies. So this is all a result of federal overreach. Again, the Supreme Court told the states, you have to use public schools and educate all students, whether or not their parents are here or they are here legally. So it's these decisions and these policies that has nationalized something that was never intended to be, all of which could have been very easily avoidable. California could be a sanctuary state all at once, but they just have to support them. Whoopsie doopsie, we're $4 billion in debt now. We allowed them to have Medicaid. Hey, feds, we need some help. Well, why should Oklahoma have to pay for California's decision-making policies? It just doesn't make sense. And avoiding that is a point of federalism.
I know we have a caller, but I know one thing the AP keeps talking about is the Department of Homeland Security's authority. And it's like that should have never existed. We actually thought it was pretty illegal to come up with the Department of Homeland Security, not constitutional at all anyway, but nobody on our right ever points that out. So caller, go right ahead.
Hi, Kate, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
With the exception of Thomas Massey, who points it out. He's the lone survivor in Congress.
You're right.
But Suzanne, I'm so glad you mentioned James Madison, and you'll correct me how he said this, but basically he said something to the effect of the republic will end when the people stop enforcing the Constitution, basically. And, two examples you've already given. One, the Second Amendment was with red flag laws, and the Fourth Amendment was totally revoked with civil asset forfeiture. And I would just ask, can you make the argument that the Republic is ended? And I'll hang up the line.
Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. And this is language that goes back to the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, which came about after the Alien and Sedition Acts. And Thomas Jefferson also had a great quote from 1820 federal judges. He equated them to a hostile army digging under the walls of the Citadel of Liberty. This is how we turned the federal constitution into a national constitution. This is why Trump, going back to your question, is appealing to 9 lawyers dressed in wizard costumes to see how he conducts his policy. So here we are.
Oh, no. Yeah. And we were talking on the break about he's afraid of impeachment. Yes, a little bit.
You know what? I that's just a hunch. Yep. That's my feeling, because I think if he seems to be they're screaming about him ignoring the Supreme Court. We get enough about this, and I think if somebody does file impeachment, I think I'm not saying it would happen, and I wouldn't say he would be convicted, but I would certainly say that enough Republicans would pile on. And maybe that's why, but I just don't understand this deference to these circuit court judges and going and appealing before the Supreme Court on so many of these issues.
I interviewed Ron Paul.
Particularly the transgenders. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
I interviewed Ron Paul last week, and I asked him, the question, as far as Congress goes, what are we looking at? And he said, public office is just gone. It's just gone. And it's just going to have to be the people that step up now, because the Congress is just gone. Is that your feeling too? I mean, yeah.
100%. Clyde Wilson's one of my favorite historians. And he said, we've gotten to the point where these politicians are really great at attaining office, achieving office, but just absolutely abysmal when it comes to filling offices. That sums it up to me. Wow. Once they get in there, what do? Massey's the only one fighting, and you've seen the result and how everybody's turning on him. Yeah. And he's the only one that's the closest to respecting the limits put in place by the Constitution. Again, how did immigration ever become a federal national law? It was never intended to be. So, when it was ratified, the states were supposed to be separate and distinct on their own, but from a foreign entity, it was supposed to be one nation. And the indoctrination is thick. Think about the Pledge of Allegiance and what I told you about sovereign and independent states, and compare that to one nation, indivisible. If George Washington had heard that, he would have drawn his sword. He would put his hand over his heart.
Right. Suzanne C. Sherman, thank you. You can go to her website, Suzanne C. Sherman, for more. And I so appreciate you. Hopefully, I can talk you into coming back next week. We'll talk about prepping. Hopefully.
Thank you, Kate.
You betcha. Thank you.
Always a blast.
Always a blast. Thank you so much. I love listening to Suzanne and just talking reason, not parties, just reason. I love that. And of course, I'll be right back with a special guest. Don't go anywhere.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Canceled due to human-caused global warming. Or is it cooling now? Or is it both warming and cooling? Whatever the government says, I believe them. The Kate Dalley Show starts now.
Eminentissimo, eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum. Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost. Qui sibi nomen imposuit, Leonem decimum quartum.
So the Pope is Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who's taken the name of Leo the 14th, Pope Leo the 14th.
All right, welcome. Kate Dalley Show, last hour on a Thursday. And I'm so glad that you're joining me because I have a special guest in this hour that whom I've never had on the show. And I don't know why I haven't had him. So I'm glad he's here now. And so grateful for him to spend his time with us right now. And of course, Pat Miletich is with us. And let me just tell you just a little bit about him because this is just, he's had an amazing career. First off, UFC champion for 4 years, UFC Hall of Fame, coached 95 athletes to televised careers, coached 12 world champions, 25 years experience training law enforcement military personnel, 38 years soil to human health researcher. That's going to be important for today's discussion. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, but this is vital. And asymmetrical self-defense expert. And welcome to the show, Pat. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kate. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're with me because I think that you have so much to say regarding, well, let me just start here. The conversation, of course, is on MAHA continuously. And today, a new announcement was made that actually a friend of Robert Kennedy taps Donald Trump taps the wellness influencer close to Robert F. Kennedy for Surgeon General. And a lot of people are waiting for this to kick in and for the government to make good choices for us. And I'm thinking, no, that would be us. We need to do that regardless of what government does. I'm always, it's nice to see government make some steps in the right direction if they can or will, but that's not going to be the reason I do what I do, right, as a person. But I think people are probably wondering what got you in to being a soil researcher, because I think this is fascinating. Everyone is being told, grow your own food, let's go and do all of these things and be self-sufficient. But there's way more to it than that and things that we're missing. And so as a UFC champion for 4 years, as a fighter, what led you into this? What led you into soil?
Yeah, I appreciate the question.
Sure.
So I was sick basically my entire childhood with respiratory illness. I loved wrestling and football. I was a good athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't quite win the big championships because I just simply couldn't breathe. I was breathing through a straw, what it felt like breathing through a straw that was full of mucus my entire childhood.
Wow.
So you can imagine running as fast as you can for as long as you can and suffocating the entire time. That's what wrestling matches were like for me my entire life.
Wow.
So when I was right around 20 years old, 19 or 20 years old, I was getting ready to turn pro in kickboxing at the time. I had left college. My mother had heart problems, so I left college and was kind of helping her and working 3 jobs, but I was also training in martial arts and kickboxing. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to win a world title or some sort of championship, and I needed to figure out how to breathe. And so doctors weren't really figuring that out. So I did a ton of research and sought out the organic substances that I felt would help me kind of solve my problems. And 10 days later, I literally went from breathing through a straw full of mucus to breathing through what felt like to me a giant clear PVC tube. And all of a sudden I could do anything I wanted athletically. I could run as fast as I wanted for as long as I wanted. I could, at 5'10", I was, all of a sudden dunking basketballs and lifting huge amounts of weight. And I just had endless amounts of endurance, which of course led to a national kickboxing championship, but eventual UFC championship, and then a lot more research, and about 10 years of research into human health and performance led me to the soil and led me to the environment, which made me realize that all of our problems are coming from the environment, basically.
Wow. So talk to me about, and I love that too, that you're coming from a whole lifetime of trying to get healthy. So tell me about soil that people do not understand. Because I think we really never, I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the show, actually. So what do you have to say about soil and some of the things that we misunderstand about it?
Well, basically, you get to a point, 38 years for me, almost 39 years of research, that the human body and soil are one and the same. We need the exact same nutrients. We need the same microbes, the same soil-borne probiotics, which are very vast and huge in number. And we need those microbes to break the nutrients down in the soil to make them bioavailable for plants, which then become bioavailable for animals or for us. And then the transfer of the nutrients, which, people talk about vitamin mineral supplements and things like that. People don't understand that 95% of all supplements are created in laboratories. They're synthetics, or the minerals are just rock dust, which are not bioavailable. So they're zinc and magnesium and any of the other metals that they talk about are in the heavy metal form. So to us in our world, there's a very big difference between a heavy metal and a colloid mineral. So that is a metal that has been digested by microbes and bonded with carbon and made available to all life on Earth to create vitality, life, prosperity, all those things. So when they talk about heavy metal limits or levels, acceptable levels, we don't even talk about things like that. Those don't exist to us. As far as there's the best way, and chemists and agronomists and everybody's totally confused when I talk, is there's heavy metals and then there's colloid minerals that create health, right? So there's a big difference in an understanding, and I'll explain it this way, and I'll try to make it really simple. When rocks break down in the core crust of the earth and those metals work their way into the soil layers, the microbes were created by God, nature, whatever you want to believe, to break those metals down, to digest them, and make them bioavailable to plants and create life on Earth, right? So through modern agriculture for the past 60, 70 years, whatever it's been, even longer, we've decimated that population of microorganisms in the soil, therefore, and mined all the minerals out of the soil with every harvest of every crop. So now our soil not only is nutrient deficient, but it's lifeless because of the microbes being decimated by the massive amounts of chemicals, about 1 billion acres minimum in the United States. So,
wow. So eating a potato in 1910 and eating a potato today, tell me the difference.
Well, I mean, any plant that you grow, ideally you would like to have minimum 60 minerals in it, right? Which are needed for our health, for animal health, for honeybee health, for plant health, for what we call genetic expression or immune function, to turn on all the equalizer on the stereo system to the right places, right? To make the proper frequency. But when you're just eating starch at this point with nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and, a little bit for flavor, some pesticides and herbicides.
Oh, gosh. This sounds so terrible.
Just a little spice. No need to add salt.
Just a little sprinkling on top of asbestos. Oh, my gosh. I don't even think we realize what we're eating. And then glyphosate. glyphosate is just a whole even different, I mean, another added topic on top of this because they started really penetrating the soils, right?
Well, and they've been using, things like copper in a heavy form and some other things since I think the 30s, probably for insecticides and things like that. So it's not the metals that are making us sick; it's the form that they're in that make us sick, right? And so heavy metals and synthetics combined create DNA damage, improper genetic expression, improper immune function, mitochondrial damage and dysfunction, and a lot of an array of health issues, right? So that's what we're all about, is correcting the soil and even breaking down the synthetics. Things like glyphosate are really easy to break down for our program. Heavy metals can be converted. All synthetics, pesticide residues, forever chemicals take a couple of months to break back down into their organic form, their original form, because all of these things come from petroleum and from coal. So those at one time are natural organic substances. And so synthesizing that turns them into synthetic chemicals, and our program just converts them back.
Wow. So the food that we're growing, when we say grow your own food at home, people are using essentially some of the same things that they're using on the grand scale that are hurting us. So then what would be the difference? If we're using
there is no difference. And so, there's a lot of plants out there that have what's called antioxidant properties, for instance, berries, citrus, other plants. But when you grow them with synthetic chemicals, synthetic fertilizers, they have no immune function. They can't protect themselves from, the pests, the fungal, bacterial imbalances, things like that. So there's problems there. But then their ability to remove and chelate heavy metals and synthetics out of the body are diminished greatly as well. So it's just nutrient deficiencies and toxicities are rampant in America. We're some of the sickest people on the planet, if not the sickest, and because of nutrient deficiencies and toxicities.
Wow. I know that they started introducing the chemical fertilizers, and those were so toxic and poisonous to us, and all these new diseases started developing in the early 1900s when they really implemented this based on the eugenic lie that we were overpopulated. So they had to add all this stuff in because we used to do it natural ways. We used to fertilize naturally. Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so some people that will say that they're organic will use manure from hogs and chickens and cows, but they discount what those animals were eating, grains grown with synthetic chemicals, right?
Wow.
So there's a problem there. And then there's what they call a bioaccumulation.
On that point, I want to come back on that point. I'm more with the great Pat Miletich. Don't miss this. You're going to learn so much in this hour. Be right back. Kate Dalley Show, KateDalleyRadio.com.
Well, hello everybody, it's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. But I'm sure, for at least I hope, I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Show.
All right, welcome back. Stranglehold, little Ted for you. Welcome back to the show. And of course, look, I like ivermectin and fembenzenol. I'm not a huge fan of pharma. I mean, I talked a lot about pharma over the years, but allfamilypharmacy.com/Kate, actually, that is the place to go to get doctor scripts, even antibiotics if you want them. This is a great place to get them without having to go find a doctor to get you refills or to get them for you. And you get them sent to your door. These are doctor scripts sent to your door. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com. And I do love it for that reason. I do think that we need to clear out the parasites, which I'm hoping everybody's doing now. And I really do hope that you really look into that, because we are chock full of parasites and we do need to be cleansing ourselves. So ivermectin and fenbenzanol should be taken together. But go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Kate or put in the code Kate10, get 10% off. But it's a vehicle. It's a way for you to get that without having to leave your home. So there you go. I have the great UFC champion Pat Miletich with me, and so happy to have you. You were, okay, here's a question for you. Farmers switching. How come, where are the farmers at? Where are the ranchers at with this soil problem that we have?
Yeah, well, I mean, the farmers, many of them anyway, are aware of the severity of the situations, but we have to understand at the same time that, you know, in the 1970s was the major switch over what they called the Green Revolution, where farmers were basically enticed through data to grow big yields, be able to go from a 300-acre farm to a 3,000-acre farm, be able to build a new house, drive a new truck, have a new combine, you know, all those things that humans are susceptible to.
Sure.
And the conversion started to happen at a pretty fast rate. It was happening before that, but started to happen at a pretty fast rate in the 70s. And that's when, you know, chemical introduction, you know, the NPK fertilizers and things like that were introduced. And since then, because the education systems, the ag departments at the universities have been funded by ag chemical companies. A lot of the, obviously, biologists, PhDs, professors have been replaced with chemists in many ways, right? And so that's kind of what's happened. And so the whole agriculture system, including the financial system around it, the insurance system around it, and standards of procedures, which are written by those ag chemical companies, have to be followed by the farmer to be able to get a loan from a bank. You know, on average, a farmer with 1,000 acres has to take out a loan for about $500,000 to be able to get his seed and his inputs for that year alone. And then if he doesn't follow the SOPs, then the insurance company won't insure his crop or his bankruptcy protection. So farmers are trapped in this system. And so it makes it very tough for them to escape. Yeah. And so that's kind of where we're at. And that's why when you go to the grocery store, it's very difficult to find anything, you know, in my humble opinion, anything edible. We're dealing with that. And, you know, our meat is eating synthetically grown grain, chickens, cattle, hogs, our vegetables, our produce are being grown with synthetics. And so we are just ingesting more and more synthetics and heavy metals. And that is, of course, many times, some people are better genetically at chelating or removing those toxins, but no matter what, we're you know, having those build up in our system. So it's causing all kinds of problems health-wise, not only for the environment, but for humans. And then we go to someone in a white lab coat who's an expert who gives us, unfortunately, more synthetics as a solution.
We're so mineral deficient, aren't we? Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, again, the levels and numbers of minerals and what form they have to be in are almost void from our environment and our bodies now.
Yeah. I had Dr. Michelle Jorgensen on talking about remineralizing your teeth. And she said, do the baking soda test, you know, do a quarter teaspoon baking soda in half a cup of water, drink it down. And if you don't burp within 2 minutes, you are unmineralized. You need to work on your minerals because you do not have enough in that gut to be processing through things. Because you mentioned some people are way better at processing through some of this stuff, through all this junk, all these chemicals than others. And if it takes you longer than 2 minutes to burp, you really do need to work on remineralizing yourself. And how do we do that? So when we come back, this is a shorter segment, but when we come back, I want to talk about that. I want to talk, Pat Miletich is with me, UFC champion. And he is just got so much on this soil saver. actually, soilsaver.org. Be right back on the Kate Dalley Show with Pat. Stay with me.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Show.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Kate Dalley Show. I have a very special guest on, Pat Miletich, who is former UFC champion. And boy, does he have some knowledge on soil, which, by the way, we've never talked about on the show, really. We've never really gotten down to what's wrong with our food supply at its core. And I love that he's on with me. In fact, we're going to have to do 2 shows, so I'm going to have to beg you to come back, Pat, because there's just no time to cover everything, all the questions I have. So I wanted to ask you about, well, I want to make this statement first. We're talking about canceling a food dye, which is great, but we're not talking about the core issue, which is our soil. And so a lot of people, what they're doing is counting on Maha to solve everything when we can personally make decisions ourselves. But we can choose organic, right? So what's your feeling on organic foods?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of misnomers, I guess, in organic. You know, we know that conventional is technically warfare chemicals and antibiotics. That's all they are.
Okay.
You know, the nitrogen can be turned into bombs. The urea can be turned into diesel fuel. Pesticides are, you know, for warfare. And then you've got the antibiotics, the herbicides, and the fungicides. So that's basically what our food's being grown with at a conventional level. The organic is better. Look, there's a lot of experts out there, a lot of misinformation. When you get, say, a fertilizer with cow manure, hog manure, chicken manure, bone meal, feather meal, things like that, we just have to remember that most of those animals across the country are being fed grains grown with synthetic chemicals. So there's going to be bioaccumulation, they call it, in the tissue, in the cells of the animals, and also in their manure. What goes in is going to come out. And so we have to understand. Now, we have the ability with our programs to convert all synthetics and heavy metals into beneficial nutrients. So when I've got a pile of chicken manure and hog manure or any of these things, we can use our programs to break that down into truly bioavailable, non-toxic forms of fertilizer. But so there's some of that going on in organic. A lot of people don't understand and think below the layers that it's animal manure, so thereby it's organic. Well, there's going to be some synthetics in there as well. So we have to be kind of careful with how we do that. It's still there.
Okay. A better choice?
A better choice would be using real nutrients from the earth, deposits of the nutrients that come from humates, from volcanic rock, from all these things that have the building blocks of life. Now, again, those are not bioavailable until the proper microbes, the probiotics, non-GMO, mind you, are used to break those down and converted into beneficial bioavailable nutrients. And that's what creates in people's backyards. We, at Soil Savior, we create Jurassic gardens in people's backyards.
Wow.
I've had a friend of mine got yelled at by his wife because the tomato plants and the pepper plants and the cucumber plants got so out of control in his backyard. That happens.
No way.
That happens a lot. That happens a lot.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Talk to me more about GMO. What people don't understand.
So many years ago, and actually we work with a gentleman who's one of the top plant geneticists in the world. He was in the first group of geneticists who created the GMO cotton crops was the first ones to come out. So genetically modified seeds are tolerant, of course, of herbicides and things like that. Then you get, now they've gotten into, of course, for many years, mosquitoes, honeybees, insects in general, plants, trees, animals, and now, of course, with the mRNA technology and CRISPR technology, they don't call it genetically modified. They call it gene therapy in human beings. A little tamer name, but it's the same thing going on. And so if Monsanto or any other company is successful in you have to have a patent to alter or a patent to alter, process to alter, patented. And if you're successful, then you own that seed. So you can't own anything that exists naturally in nature. But if you alter it and you have the patented process to alter, you own it. So that thereby a big corporation can own a seed or a tree or anything. And then when you go up the line of organisms all the way to human beings, well, Supreme Court precedence has been set that if you're able to alter the genetics of something, it becomes your property. So when we have human beings potentially having their genetics altered, who do you become property of? Your creator or those who altered you, right? So there's some moral questions here that are going on. And it's very important for people to understand that I would like to keep my genetics pristine or as as good as possible. And that's why we use the products we use. So
on a scale of 1 to North Korea, how tyrannical is it right now as far as the changing of of us genetically?
Well, it's gotten pretty goofy. There's a lot of corporations that are getting into, the CRISPR tech and the genetic modification or therapy, gene therapy of human beings. And so for the people that have portfolios, stock portfolios, check and see what you have in your portfolio, because you might have some of those. And then you can look at your children and you can decide what's more important to you, your stock portfolio or your children.
Wow. That's going to hit home for a lot of people right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, look, people are going to make choices. I don't think that people that work for any of the corporations are villains. Farmers are not villains. Everybody's trying to pay their bills, take care of their children.
Yeah.
And so we have to humanize this situation, understand that people are simply just trying to pay their bills.
Right.
We just try to offer people what we feel is a much better solution. My humble opinion, that's a much better solution for growing food and creating vitality in human beings or, our animals.
Right. I mean, the farmers and ranchers are tied in to be able to conduct any business at all by the strings, right, given to them, like you expressed earlier. There's a certain set of strings that if you don't do XYZ for us, we're not going to allow you to do XYZ. So they have to do that, just like we have to go in right now if we want to fly and get the real ID because no one's fought it. So we've got to get the real ID to do any flying or a driver's license to go drive. So everybody's tied.
My interest is, I have no interest with what we're doing. We have no interest right now in diving into big ag. That's not our, look, if somebody wants to come over to us and discuss going organic, truly organic, we can do that.
Right.
But a lot of people, millions of people out there are growing their own food, gardens, orchards, all these different types of things. Hunting land, they want to heal their hunting land to collect all the wildlife on their property. We do those sort of things. That's what we're interested in. So it's just, if one of us become ill, we have a decision to either go to conventional medicine or, a homeopath or naturopath. That's all a decision.
So do people actually purchase the soil from you? And then, because if somebody wants to garden right now and they're like, I really want this food to be nutrient rich, where do they even start?
Well, they can go to soilsavior.org and they can see that, our 0 to 5 acre box is about this big. It's got 7 components in it. You mix it in water and you spray it on your soil and your plants. And some people do that weekly. Just be prepared for what happens if you do it weekly. It's gonna go nuts. All the way up, we have 20 to 40 acre boxes as well. And anything bigger than that, Doc Will Spencer, who's a business partner and a genius, kind of a national treasure to say the least, will do a consultation with them and test their soil and things like that. And then so the team can step in at something that's a little bit bigger.
It would actually be really good to get soil samples from all over the country, so we really can. So people have their eyes open to this issue on how deficient it is, and I love that there's an answer, at least. And I said the website wrong because I'm the name murderer. I got that name 14 years ago. So it's soilsavior.org, right?
Yes. And
Okay.
again, it's just a matter of
Understanding.
it's just a matter of people just making a decision. What do they want for their family? So
I
that's all it
love
is.
that. I'm gonna be right back. More with UFC champion Pat Miletich when I come back. He's fantastic, and I love that there's solutions. I really do. Be right back on the Kate Dalley Show. KateDalleyRadio.com. Over 27 million served, and be right back. Kate Dalley Show.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
Dalley Show.
All right, welcome back, Kate Dalley Show. And I so apologize for giving out the wrong website in the very beginning. And make sure you go to the right website because it's based right here in the United States. It is soilsavior.org. Soilsavior.org. I had given out the wrong one. And so sorry about that, Pat. Pat Miletich is with me, and former UFC champion. And let me just tell you what a wealth of information he is. And of course, I'll have him back. I'm going to for a part 2. And coming at you from the Canyon Media Studios in St. George, I just wanted to get to the website. GCMAF is there for cancer. And of course, on the Kate Dalley Show page, there is a link to buy the rugby patches that actually for nicotine that actually help the show. So you can go to the Kate Dalley Show page on Facebook and get that. The rugby nicotine patches, when you order them, and people, by the way, I'm getting so many emails of success on those. Make sure that you go through the Kate Dalley Show link. I will add that to the main website, but I just want to make sure that you realize it's on the Facebook page. Okay, Pat, back here with you. And can I ask you, you did soil samples out of North Carolina. This is going to blow people's minds. Out of North Carolina after the flooding, the hurricane. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Will Spencer, business partner. Again, if you think I've got information, wait till you talk to Will. Will's going to blow your mind. He's a huge wealth of knowledge. And so anyway, he went over and visited a good friend of ours, Billy Bond. You can look him up as well. He's a soil expert. And Billy had Will come over, test the soil there, and the radiation contamination and acids and a lot of other chemical components showed up in that soil at very high levels. If people wonder why they're getting sick, the chemical levels and radiation contamination are quite high. And so there's been some tests ongoing there, and we'll be releasing our results publicly here in probably a few weeks.
Okay. And could I even go and take a leap and say that weather manipulation, weather weaponry, utilizing our weather would cause such horrible contamination issues that we can't even understand, and people wouldn't even really be looking at that as something that they would have to be dealing with in their systems after something like that. That weather manipulation and weather warfare ends up to be an even bigger problem when you're looking at the soil, and people usually don't look at the soil. What happens after?
That needs to be covered in kind of 2 sections, so I'll do this as succinctly and as short as possible. Weather modification we know has been going on since the 40s minimum.
Yeah.
When people ask questions about that or think you're crazy, say Google weather modification corporations. You'll find plenty. Weather modification legislation, and then what components, what metals are being sprayed, the aluminums and bariums and strong other metals. And our tests in soil just for aluminum, it's going the exponential rise in heavy metals in the soil across the country are going crazy. So we have that, for instance, to influence the weather. Two, the mining of quartz and lithium in the North Carolina area, those two substances are generally intertwined with radioactive veins of minerals. So they're seeking the quartz, they're seeking the lithium. The other stuff becomes what's called a tailings or mountains of potentially radioactive substances. When you have a wall of water come through that valley and wash that all over the Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina region, that shows up in our tests, right? That those components, those toxins are showing up everywhere. We've had first responders, their rubber boots are falling apart, skin falling off of people, a lot of respiratory nervous system issues, things like that. So this is no joking matter.
Wow. Like Chernobyl, like that bad. Would it be fair to say?
That yeah. His tests show it's quite high. It's very
high.
So.
Wow. And people never think of that. I didn't even think about that. It's just something that you don't realize is being left behind and what we're truly dealing with. But usually the real issues aren't talked about. So,
right.
That's
But there's solutions. So
there are solutions.
We have solutions. So
okay, which is great because we've got to get those. We're always talking about minerals on the show and remineralizing our teeth and remineralizing ourselves and figuring out how we can fight whatever is dropped in our food or landing on us or whatever the case may be. And
sure.
Even when I was talking about North Carolina, I don't know that it was weather weaponry, but it's a possibility, right? Because we know it exists, right? So even the North Carolinians were actually talking about that and saying that they kind of were assuming that there was something that had to do with that. So when it comes to like Bayer and all these different pharmaceutical companies and their interest in land, Bill Gates buying up land, give us your take.
Well, I would say this is that we'll go to the biosolids issue, which is lawn clippings. County compost facilities all across the country are using lawn clippings, which have ag chemicals in them. And then also many of them are using the human waste, which is, feces, treated feces from human beings that are full of cleaning chemicals dumped down your toilet or your sink, pharmaceuticals that all the people have ingested. And then they're turning that into a compost, combining it, turning it into a compost, and selling that to farmers across the country, gardeners, people for their lawns after they've aerated their lawns. And we're roughly at about 70 million acres that have had those toxic chemicals and compost spread all over a good portion of the United States. Unfortunately, it's making cattle sick. It's contaminating water. It's cattle are dropping left and right down in Texas, Johnson County, Texas. Farms have already been taken because of it. So we have to understand that the EPA allowable levels of heavy metals and synthetics and things like that in the soil, they're planning on lowering their allowable levels here pretty soon. And when they do, because they've been allowing this contamination to take place, when they lower their allowable levels in soil, well, how much land is going to then be condemned and deemed useless? So if we want to talk about potential land grabs, that's potentially one of the problems that could arise. And very important for people out there to understand that if you've been having biosolids, this compost spread on your land, that you reconsider it, and that can be reversed. It takes some folks that have some know-how to do that, but in the right components. But it can be reversed.
Okay, we're at the end of the show. I am going to have you back because I know people think, well, I'm going to eat 5 salads a day and that's going to give me enough nutrition. What do you say to that? The people that are like, I'm going to eat 5 salads a day. Is it going to do anything for them?
Will has done 25,000 scans of human beings over the past 20 some years. There's 3 threads that he talks about all the time, and it's 100% true.
Okay.
Mineral deficiencies,
Yeah.
toxicity, and systemic infections.
Oh my gosh. Pat Miletich, it's been a pleasure. I will have you back on, Will as well. And of course, be faithful, be fearless. I'll see you back here tomorrow. I have a special guest tomorrow that you're going to also really want to listen to. So, hey, Dalley.